So despite the unsuccessful efforts of my Liberal colleagues today and actually throughout this week to try to spin the narrative that Canadians received really good value for the $60 million wasted on this Arrive scam, we often hear that it saved lives, and there's really no empirical evidence to suggest that one life was actually saved, yet the Liberals continue with this narrative. And I think Canadians would actually prefer the independent voice of the Auditor General on the issue of value and not biased Liberal members. So I'm going to put that phrase to you in her report. The Canadian Border Services Agency's disregard for policies, controls, and transparency in the contracting process restricted opportunities for competition and undermined value for money. Emphasis, value for money. So the focus that I have for the amount of time I have left is to really drill down on the guess that the Auditor General made with respect to what this fiasco costs Canadians. It's almost $60 million, but that doesn't include the probably millions of dollars that were paid to the Federal Public Service. So can you offer any suggestion as to how many millions of dollars on top of that $60 million was actually paid to the professional Federal Public Service?
So I'll start with that. So with respect to responsibilities on the oversight of what this whole thing cost, that does not fall on the technical delivery teams. So to give you an estimate on what it costs to pay public servants, I don't have that answer, Mr. Brock.
But you can confirm that federal public servants did work over the number of years that the 177 different applications of this Arrive scam was being rolled out. We did have federal public servants working, correct?
That's correct.
We have.
Absolutely. Okay.
And not just
there's a cost.
Not just within the agency, the CBSA, but we also have to look at PHAC and the other
Absolutely.
agencies. And then we're not responsible for providing that whole.
Absolutely. Okay. And we don't know what that number is, but it's going to be more than the $60 million estimate. And we also have evidence from the Auditor General that there were actual millions of dollars paid out to contractors who did zero work on the Arrive can, but actually unrelated work. Now, do you have evidence for the time that you were at CBSA of entities coming forward, knowing that there was a pot of unlimited resources to take advantage of, seeking millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for projects unrelated to Arrive can? Mr. McDonald.
I don't have any evidence of wrongdoing, just to be clear. I think what I would say is that there were divisions, federal public servants who wanted to associate with ArriveCan so that they could get the funding that they needed to move their initiatives forward.
Give me some examples, sir.
Well, there were a few in commercial. There were a few other in travelers. We had some corollary projects that we had already started, some no-touch mobile, the e-declaration, some of these things that we were trying to work on. And if you could just put it under an ArriveCan tagline, it was easier to achieve the funding and get the budget that you wanted from the finance branch. So oftentimes what people would do is if they had overall agendas, they would associate it with what was going on in the pandemic, and then ArriveCan, they would get the budget for it, and then they would move it closer to it.
Essentially lying to access taxpayer money using the tagline ArriveCan. Is that fair to say?
I have to be honest with you. I wouldn't call it a lie. I would call it perhaps an exaggeration, but they would align what they were hoping to achieve as their target with what was happening as ArriveCan to obtain their outcome. It's a stretch. There's a very big difference between a stretch and a lie, in my opinion. But I never saw anybody nefariously lie so that they could get access to hundreds of thousands of dollars. But let's say they were loosely coupled.
Mr. McDonald, I believe in black and white. I don't believe in gray. Okay? If people are accessing taxpayer funds that has absolutely nothing to do with the ArriveCAN application and development. They are misleading government officials to access taxpayer funds. I call that misleading. I call that an absolute lie. How many millions of dollars can you estimate was actually spent on individuals, organizations that you just described?
I left after the first year. I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess, but I would say the number would be higher than $1 million if you totaled it from my vantage point.
Okay.
That is
Is
your
that my
time.
Thank
Yep.
you.